Thank you, Shreya, and thank you, nasscom, for having me. It's a long time coming, so I'm sorry I'm not with you there in person, but I'm glad we can make it, and thank you all for joining. So I'm going to talk about startups and building software businesses. By way of introduction, I'm Dharmesh, and I'm actually from India. I'm from a tiny town called Bilimara, which some of you might be familiar with. It's near Surat, just north of Mumbai. And the one thing you should know about me is that on the extrovert to introvert scale, I am way on the introvert side. So public speaking is not my thing. If you had asked any of my friends and family that know me if I would ever start a business or do any kind of entrepreneurial thing, they would have voted me the least likely to do that. That's just not my thing. But I've learned since then that there are two things that I love a lot. One is software, building software, and the other is building businesses. And so that's me at the center of that Venn diagram. So I've been doing software businesses now for 30 years. I've been at it for a long time. It's pretty much the only career that I know. And here is a shot of me at my current company called HubSpot. And it was started when I was a grad student at MIT. HubSpot's done pretty well. It was started in 2006, went public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2014. And this is the prototypical photo of being on the New York Stock Exchange and ringing the bell. And sometimes people ask me when they see this photo why I'm not more excited. And my answer to that is, this is a picture of me excited. This is as excited as I get. And so what HubSpot does is we're a CRM platform for scaling companies, but we're not here to talk about HubSpot. That's not why we're here. My goal here is to actually increase your odds of growing a successful company, most likely a software or tech company of some sort. So that's what we're going to spend the next 20 minutes doing. And the lessons that I'm going to share with you, a lot of them are, there's anytime you go through the kind of startup journey, there's this kind of minefield of mistakes that you can make. And many of the lessons I've learned is I've made a bunch of those mistakes. So I'm going to try and do is condense down some of the most impactful lessons that I've learned across 30 years of building software businesses. Hope you find it useful. So let's talk about the beginning. So the question is, what's the one thing that you must do to build a successful startup? The one thing that you absolutely have to do to build a successful startup. And the answer is, you have to start. You just have to start. And the mistake many people make as entrepreneurs is they wait for this brilliant idea. It's like, okay, I'm thinking about things and I've got ideas. I'm not sure my idea is good enough. My advice here is don't wait for the brilliant idea before you start your company. Often you have to actually start the company in order to have the brilliant idea. I know it sounds paradoxical, but what ends up happening often is you start with an idea, maybe good, great, maybe bad. But then as you encounter the market, as you kind of iterate, as you talk to customers, that's when often the best ideas will come to you is after you start the company, not before. So don't let the absence of what you think is a brilliant idea hold you back from actually getting started. Once you have that idea, this is another mistake entrepreneurs often make, is they go into stealth mode, which is a shorthand for I'm not going to tell anybody what this idea is because I think there's going to be competitors out there that are going to steal my idea and they're going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to go into stealth mode. And my advice here is stealth mode is for fighter jets, not startups. If you take that very kind of cautious approach, yes, there's a small, tiny chance that if you share your ideas, someone else is going to do something similar. But the odds are they're going to do it anyway. And the even higher odds are that you're going to have a hard time even convincing your own team to kind of pursue the idea that you're pursuing. It's very, very rare for someone to do exactly what you're talking about. But if you don't share your idea, it's like it's hard to convince people to join. It's hard to find investors. It's like, yeah, I can't really tell you about this idea and this company that you should know about because then I'd have to kill you. So don't go into stealth mode. Share your idea, get it out there. And don't worry about the competition too much. The best way to beat your competitors over time is to focus on your customers instead. So if you look at the startup graveyard, so many of the startups die because instead of focusing on their customers, which is what they should be doing, they're obsessed over their competitors and what the competitors are doing. Don't do that. Just focus on your customers and you will more than likely beat out your competitors as a result. All right, so in the early stages, especially in software businesses, we'll talk about this. So here there's kind of 4 buckets of risk, and we're going to walk through them. The first is product risk. Product risk is, okay, I've got this idea for a company, I've got this idea for a product, and there's a risk that I just won't be able to build it. That's product risk. Then there's market risk. It's like, okay, I can build a product, I was successful at that, but maybe there's no market for it to be able to sustain the growth that I need in order to make this a real business. That's market risk. Number 3 is financial risk. I've got a product, I was able to build it, there's a market out there for it, but I just couldn't raise the capital in order to kind of build the company that I needed to build. Now, thankfully, in the software business, financial risk is relatively low because capital needs are relatively low, but that is certainly a bucket of risk. And the 4th one is execution risk. This is, I got the product right, the market's there, the capital's there, but then I just managed to mess it up somewhere along the way, which happens all the time. Everyone makes mistakes. So the challenge I think that lots of software entrepreneurs particularly make is they become maniacally focused on that first risk, on the product risk, because that's what they're good at. That's what I'm good at. That's what I love to do. So there's like, oh, I've heard that the product is the most important thing. It is the most important thing. But the thing that will kill most startups is not that they fail to build a product. Most tech entrepreneurs will successfully build some semblance of the product they're looking to build. What will usually kill them is that there's just no market for that product. So what you should do is you should solve for market risk as early in the process as possible, in order for you to kind of recognize whether there is or is not a market. Okay, so how do you do that? How do you mitigate market risk? The answer is you will need to get some semblance of a product out there, and then you have to kind of sell it early and sell it often. The only real way to know whether customers will pay for the product that you have is to ask them for money and to sell it. That's the only reliable evidence. You can't just say, hey, I've got this product. If we sold it to you for Y price, would you buy it? Because lots of people are nice people and they'll say, yeah, that's really interesting. I think, yeah. And then you go off and build it, and it's just not sufficient evidence. So trust me, the only real way to know whether someone will pay is to actually get them to pay as early in the process as you can, as possible. All right, here's a hard one lesson, is that there are 2 kinds of companies, and neither one is good or bad. There are tools companies, and a tool company is like, okay, I'm building something, it's in a known category, customers are already probably using something in that category already, people understand it, and in that case, those tools are bought. So you can set up a website, you can have someone come to your website, and they sort of understand the category already, and they'll put in their credit card and they'll buy it. They're bought. If instead what you're selling is a transformation, which is, hey, everything you thought about X is wrong, you need to rethink your business, it's an entirely new category, the world has changed, you have to make all this kind of leap to really be able to stay competitive, that's what's called transformation. You're asking for your potential customers to transform their business and kind of believe in this new category. And as it turns out, transformations are sold. You cannot pitch a transformation on your website. You can try, but I'm not saying you need to necessarily have a massive sales team, but you do have to have humans convincing other folks that here's what this transformation means, here's why it's important, here's why you should do this. So know whether you're a tools company. If you're a tools company, it's okay, set the website up. If you're a transformation company, recognize that you're going to have to spend some calories actually selling the product and educating the market. All right. Your success over time is going to be defined by how good you are at attracting amazing people. Now, I know that sounds cliched because it's cliched. Of course, you want to attract amazing people. Everyone wants to do that. The one thing I've learned about increasing your probability of attracting amazing people is being bold. And it was 15, 20 years into my entrepreneurial career before I learned the importance of this, which is what you're not trying to do is convince people. It's like, oh yeah, you should join this company. The odds of success are really high. So it's really easy to do. We're going to be able to do this. You have to be bold and set challenging, ambitious goals. That's what attracts the best people, because they are attracted to these kind of bold, ambitious challenges. So dream big and be out there trying to create a big change. Now, having said that, another common mistake, just because you're dreaming big does not mean you build for this kind of massive, we're going to have 10 million users and we're going to build this horizontal database that scales and we're going to spin up AWS instances and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be infinitely scalable. That's not your current problem, right? It's like in the early days, weeks, months, years, usually scale is not the issue. That's not what's going to stop you. That's a high quality problem. If you get to so much interest and so many customers and so many users that you're having scaling issues, that's a great problem to have. So my advice here is dream big, be bold, but iterate small. Start with something small that's working and incrementally move towards that big vision. Don't try to go down the rabbit hole for 18 months and then emerge like, oh, I've got my big thing now. Iterate small, make small incremental iterations over time. All right, so let's talk about culture. And this is a lesson I learned very late. And if I could do it all over again, this is something I would do very differently, which is entrepreneurs too often make the mistake of not thinking about culture and being deliberate about culture early enough. And I think the best time to actually think about culture, invest in culture, is time t equals 0, when you're starting the company. Because the first 2 people, the first 5 people, the first 10 people are going to define kind of the future culture of your company. So be very, very deliberate about what your culture is. So at HubSpot, we've learned that the earlier you put like a culture in place, that culture sticks for a long time. It's really, really hard to change that over the years. And so what we've done that's worked really well for us is we kind of manifested our culture, wrote it down in this PowerPoint deck. It's 128 slides long. And the kind of value of this is, number one, it forced us to think about what we want our culture to be, because you're going to have a culture one way or the other. Might as well write it down and make it the culture you want. And this has the value of attracting the kinds of people you want because they understand better how you make decisions, how you work, what the company's about, what kinds of people succeed there and are happy there. And also repels people that it's like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. I don't know if I can work for a company where they don't believe in titles or there's no hierarchy, whatever your culture happens to be. It's not this is a good culture versus bad culture. It's like, this is what defines our culture, so you can attract the people that are good fits and not attract the people, repel the people that are not going to be good fits. It's not going to be good for you. So my advice would be invest. You don't have to write 128 slides, but at least write it down and be able to answer the question as to what kind of culture you're trying to build. And the way I've thought about culture is, and I'm a product guy, so this should not be that surprising, is that I think every company actually builds 2 products. One is the product they build for customers, which is the products, what we think of traditionally as a product. But the other product you build is the culture, and that's the product you build for your people. And you're building both of those simultaneously. And the best way to build out culture is to think of it like a product that says, oh, you wouldn't build a product without talking to customers, without getting feedback, without iterating. The same way you wouldn't do culture without getting feedback from your people. What kinds of things are they looking for? What's working in the culture? What's not working in the culture? And iterating. So that's the advice there. And one of the kind of key elements of our culture, which if I could take away, had to take away 127 slides and only keep one, this would be the one that I would likely keep, which is solve for the customer. If you can kind of embed that at the core of the company, most other things will work themselves out over time. And so what and this is another slide from the culture code deck, we have this kind of hierarchy at HubSpot, which is the individual at the bottom, then team and company and customer. And so our advice, what we ask our people to do is solve for the team over the individual. So don't just solve for your self-interest, solve for your team, solve for the company over the team that says, oh, I work in sales, but I'm not going to just solve for the sales team. I'm going to actually solve for what's right for HubSpot and solve for the customer over the company. And often this is the hardest one because it's not intuitive, right? Which is like, wait a second, why? How is that possible to solve for the customer above the needs of the company? And the reason we put it this way is that over the long term, solving for the customer and putting them at the top actually is what solves for your company. That's the thing that makes the company successful over the long term. All right. This is something I'm a big, big believer in that I think entrepreneurs struggle with a long time. It took me a long time to learn this. Is just the power of focus, which is too many folks try to do too many things, too many products, too many features, too much everything. And it's a little bit contradictory, but the narrower your kind of aperture, the higher your chances of success. Narrow your market, narrow your focus, narrow the product, narrow it all, and try to be laser focused, and that increases your chances of success. Another big one, big lesson is that you and the team need to be aligned. Everyone in the company needs to be aligned, because it doesn't matter how good the people are, if they're all pulling in different directions, this is what I call kind of vector alignment, you're essentially not getting the optimal outcome, because this person's great, but they're moving this way. This other person's also great, but they're moving that way. And it sort of cancels each other out. So the more you can get everyone into alignment, the team should be aligned with each other. The team should be aligned with what the company's goals are, and the company should be aligned with what the customer needs. If you can get alignment at every level of abstraction, that increases your odds of success. All right, so winding down. The beauty of software businesses, one of the many reasons I love software businesses so much is that you get leverage. And I don't mean financial leverage, I mean like leverage, that you can have a small amount of energy and get disproportionate outcomes, right? So you can, like one person can start a company, you don't need lots of capital, you can actually build software incrementally and get value over a long period of time and build a nice, high leverage business. And so I'm going to close on this note. And this is I think it's true for businesses generally. It's particularly true for software businesses, is that in the early years of software, as you're building the product out, a lot of what you build, you're going to get leverage on over the span of many, many years. Like the leverage shows up in year 4, 5, 6, 10. And so you need to make those decisions. You're planting the trees, you're planting the seeds in the hope that over the long term, those are going to create shade for you and give the business room to kind of grow and scale. So that's all I have. Hopefully this was useful. Thanks for your time. And I'm at Dharmesh on Twitter, LinkedIn, and everywhere. Hope this was useful. Thank you. And back to you, Shreya.
For more interesting content, like, comment, and subscribe to our NASSCOM YouTube channel.